It being 8:45, I will call this meeting to order. Mr. Murray, thank you for being with us today. My understanding, Madame Murray, you will have an opening statement. And if you could do that, Madame, you know the drill here. You've been here enough times. We'll follow your opening statement with questions from our committee members. But perhaps to start, you can introduce those who you're sitting with at the head table and then commence with your statement. Thank you.
All right. And I'd like to thank the committee for inviting me to be here today to discuss our Shared Services Canada 2019-2020 Supplementary Estimates B. I'm going to be speaking in both languages, so earpieces for anyone that might need that. Je suis ravie d'être accompagnée aujourd'hui.
I'm pleased to be here with you today to represent Shared Services Canada, the first Vice President, Jeanine Bombardier, from Finance, Raj Stupples, Assistant Deputy Minister.
Board Secretariat, Karen Cahill, Acting Assistant Secretary and CFO, and Francis Bilodeau, Acting Chief Information Officer of Canada. And after my remarks, of course, my officials and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Permit me to start by providing the committee with an overview of my mandate, our challenges, and the organizations in the portfolio. Mr. Chair, good government in the 21st century means providing quality digital services that are secure, easy, and accurate. Les Canadiens ont des attentes croissantes.
Canadians have growing expectations to receive services and interact with government digitally.
Make it hard to implement policy changes, cost taxpayers more every year to maintain, and make service to the public an ongoing challenge. The main barriers to changing this reality are not uniquely technological or financial. They also require us to revisit service models, processes, rules, sunk costs, and organizational structures and cultures largely established in a previous slower-moving technological era. We've seen government IT projects that haven't gone so well because of the old way of working. Mon défi sera de changer la façon dont nous travaillons au gouvernement.
The challenge will be to change how we work in government. It will be looking at our structures, incentives, and culture, and breaking down silos so we can more easily develop and adopt digital, so that ultimately we can better serve Canadians.
Our constituency staff help constituents navigate government processes that weren't always easy to understand, and I know we'd all like to make it easier. There's much to be done, but much already underway to update our existing systems. We're modernizing the government's data centers, replacing old systems, shifting data to the cloud, or consolidating into more reliable and secure facilities. We're rolling out more digital tools so public servants can improve their service to Canadians. And we're updating and replacing some of the applications that provide critical services to Canadians so that we can count on them in the long term. Nous franchirons une étape importante bientôt.
We will reach an important milestone on April 1st when the new policy on service and digital takes effect. It will consolidate policies and directives across government to provide a single playbook that will guide our work.
And how important it is for government to be open, accessible, and provide Canadians with services that are as easy to use as the private sector offers. Think about being on your couch with your phone and booking travel to an exotic location, maybe a few months from now, or depositing a check. As Canada's first dedicated Minister of Digital Government, I'm honored to take on this challenge and lead the teams at Shared Services Canada, the Office of the CIO, and the Canadian Digital Service on our government's digital transformation journey. I'll now provide the committee with a brief overview of the organizations, Mr. Chair. Firstly, the CIO. There are over 20,000 employees working in IT and information management across the Government of Canada. Le Bureau du Dirigeant Principal.
The Office of the Chief Information Officer, or OCIO, provides them with leadership and direction. By setting policy and priorities, it enables departments to build capacity and helps with project management and oversight.
Operation Strategic Plan, which sets out how the Government of Canada manages technology and technological change within government. This change includes things like Canada Revenue Agency's Auto-Fill My Return, which saves Canadians time by filling in parts of their tax forms for them, or automatically enrolling more than half of seniors in old age security pension and GIC supplements so that they don't lose out on them just through neglecting to apply. Le plan stratégique fera aussi la...
The strategic plan will also promote a more open government by providing open access to government data so that businesses can innovate and NGOs can address more challenges. And Mr. Chair, the plan sets out a digital-first and digitally enabled government that is there to serve Canadians anytime and anywhere.
Always, but not digital only, because services will still be provided in person or by phone to those who want them that way. Secondly, the Canadian Digital Service provides direct hands-on help to federal departments. It helps them develop services for the public that are faster, simpler, and more secure. For example, CDS has created Notify, a system that lets any federal department more easily send email and text updates to Canadians about their service transactions with government, updates that may previously have been sent by mail or not at all. Suis heureuse d'affirmer, Monsieur.
I'm pleased to report that 8 departments, 12, including Services Canada and the Canada Revenue Agency, are already using this service, Mr. Chair.
Making it easier for Canadians and businesses to report a cybercrime. And CDS is working with Employment and Social Development Canada to improve the experience for Canadians with disabilities when they apply for Canada Pension Plan disability benefits. So these are just a few of many examples. More specifically, CDS is introducing proven ways of designing services that put Canadians at the center of our work. This means meeting directly with individuals and businesses to understand their needs and continuously testing new or changed services with them. Finally, CDS works very closely with the Digital Academy, part of the Canadian School of Public Service, to bring digital literacy and digital culture to federal employees at all levels and across all departments. And finally, Shared Services Canada. Our digital transformation would not be possible without reliable and secure networks, devices, and computer applications, IT infrastructure, in other words, provided by Shared Services Canada. Pour que SPC maintienne efficacement.
For SSC to effectively maintain our IT infrastructure, it needs the proper resources, the delivery of critical programs and services to Canadians rely on their success.
Confronted with aging IT systems and applications. Our number one priority is to build a secure and reliable network, one that connects our computers, mobile phones, digital devices, providing faster and easier access to any message or data on the internet or within that network. And our secure network will support these critical services. Modern networks are secure networks, protecting infrastructure from the vulnerabilities and ensuring the safety and security of Canadians' information, and they will connect seamlessly to the cloud and to the new enterprise data centers. To date, over 250 outdated data centers have been closed and consolidated into 4 modern data centers. Nous avons établi un service qui forme.
We have set up a service to provide departments with access to commercial cloud computer services. So far, we have over 40 accounts with various providers that are available and more planned.
We're enabling an agile, connected, and high-performing workforce with Microsoft's Office 365 suite of collaboration tools. And already we have 6 departments adopting email and other digital communication applications, Other departments, yet again, are preparing to make the most of this cloud-based software. Nous savons que les centaines d'anciennes
We know that hundreds of older software applications that deliver vital services to Canadians are the most vulnerable. We are working actively with departments to help them identify those that are most at risk and to determine how to update or replace them.
putting in place standards that support common approaches to IT services that all departments can use. So I'll now turn to the SSC Supplementary Estimates B. We are providing funds in the amount of $0.8 million to the Treasury Board Secretariat for their application modernization program to help speed up old software in the cloud and enterprise data centers. And with the approval of Supplementary Estimates B, Shared Services Canada's reference levels for 2019-2020 will decrease by $10.7 million to $2,243.7 million. In terms of new funding, Shared Services Canada is seeking $23 million, of which $10.2 million is to support new full-time equivalents, $4.7 million for the Centre for Plant Health in Sydney, British Columbia, $3 million for the implementation of the Canadian Border Service Agency's Assessment and Revenue Management Project, $2.8 million to support the Enhanced Passenger Protect Program, $1.7 million is required to support PSPC in stabilizing the Government of Canada's pay system, and $0.6 million to support the RCMP in establishing the National Cybercrime Coordination Unit. So that's all been a bit of a mouthful. Mr. Chair, my officials and I want to thank you again for your invitation, your interest in these matters, and I'll be pleased now to take questions from the committee.
Thank you very much. We'll start with a 6-minute round of interventions. So Mr. Aboulief.
Good morning, Minister, and thanks for appearing today before committee along with your team. And I was interested to hear about your vision and in your speech and the fact that you recognize that the government IT projects have not gone as well in the past because of our old way of working and due to the Asian government IT systems. You stated, and I quote, a group of well-meaning people in our department work on an application over several years, and then we implement, and the system struggles. It's a very strong statement. I think it speaks a lot to what's going on and the status quo of our system. So in that case, that leads me to ask you, Minister, if you would support a study by this committee to look further into the Asian government IT system and accept recommendations on how we think we can improve services for all Canadians. So the question is, would you accept the study? You do.
Well, no, what I would like to answer is thank you for the question. And I, of course, honor this committee's ability to make its own decisions as to what it wants to study, and anything that is decided by the committee, I will, of course, be very happy to provide the information and share the data that's needed for the committee to do its work.
Well, thank you. In that case, would you be willing to appear before this committee to give us your thoughts on the issue and talk further about your vision?
Well, when an invitation is presented to me, I historically have been happy to attend, and we will have to, of course, make that decision at the time that that invitation is extended.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, in this case, I do have a motion to move, and I'll be happy to table it if that's possible.
Are you going to be tabling a motion, or are you going to be reading a motion into the record, sir?
I'm going to be tabling a motion.
That's fine.
Okay, I'll read the motion. You have a copy of it, I believe. Yeah, you have a notice. It's on notice. It's on February 21st.
Okay, let us just check with that first, please.
Sure.
Mr. Abuliev, yes, we have the motion in front of us. I would ask, while we are having it distributed, that you could read it into the record, please.
The motion reads that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study of no less than 2 meetings on the Asian technology systems of the Government of Canada, including but not limited to systems which deliver programs such as NetFile, employment insurance, and old age security, and that the committee witness list include the Minister of Public Services and Procurement Canada, the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion, the Minister of National Revenue, and the Minister of Digital Government, and that the committee report its findings to the House.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, as you would know, procedurally, we're now into debate. Mr. Abuliev, you have the floor, and you've provided your motion to the committee members. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, based on the speech of the minister and being myself the shadow minister for digital government, I had the opportunity to meet with some members of the department as well as with the stakeholders, learning that we are falling behind on this, and this is of course not a partisan issue. Will never be, because this is about how we modernize and how we digitize our government further. Compared to other economies or similar economies in the world, we are really behind, and we don't really have, we don't know how well we can go in the next 10, 15 years to be able to fully modernize, not just for now, but just for the future. It's not just now digital, but always digital. So therefore, a study of such will help all of us, will help the minister, will help us, will help our colleagues across the borderline to be able to understand what's going on and to have the proper assessment, especially in departments such as old age security, employment, CRA, and others. And I think that's very critical for us to do that. And I think such a study will do no harm, rather than it would help a lot to improve and as I said, make the awareness more public to our House of Commons and to all the stakeholders.
We do have a speakers list. Next on the list, I have Mr. Drouin.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we're not necessarily against this. I'm just wondering how we're going to proceed as a committee. We've already had a subcommittee. We've adapted a report. We would ask kindly to Mr. Abuliev if he can postpone, and maybe we can discuss as to when we want to do this, because my understanding is that we already had a plan up until June. So I'm just wondering what the timeline is on this. And we know that I know the minister is here, and it's great to present motions, but we've had discussions with your colleagues in the past, specifically about the work plan. So now we come up with this, and we're blindsided essentially, and we're not necessarily against. But can we have the chance to discuss this, and then we can vote on this later? Or I know it's up to the member, but we would appreciate the collaboration on this.
Mr. Drouin, thank you. And as you correctly pointed out, it's really, and as the minister has also correctly pointed out, it's a matter of this committee to determine its own agenda. Now, we have a motion in front of us. We have several ways in which we could proceed. One would be offline conversations. If you're asking Mr. Abuliev to park this for the moment, that's fine, but that decision would rest with Mr. Abuliev. So I turn it back to you, sir.
Well, the motion has been on notice since February 21st, and I think this is very important in the outset to be able to have this study in front of us, in front of the House of Commons. I think it's very, very important. So we want to make sure that we get this motion passed, and then we can talk about timelines, because at the end of the day, we need this, and I think it's very important. And I believe if we look around, I think we know that this is critical to do, and I hope that we will be able to agree to, for the sake of the benefit of it, to be able to decide on it today, and we move forward.
You're Mr. Green.
I would tend to agree with the importance of such a study, but I would also suggest that from a process perspective, given the purported nonpartisan nature, that this would have come up in an earlier work plan discussion. And so I'm wondering, through you, Mr. Chair, if it is amendable to the mover, to either include in this motion an acknowledgement that this would be dealt with after the prioritized work that we'd already agreed on, or if they would consider having it, subsequently deferred to a committee, at which time we would prioritize the work plan. Because what I want to stay away from, Mr. Chair, is getting into the ad hoc moments where we're putting this stuff in and then changing previously agreed upon work plans.
Thank you. I have Mr. McCauley on the list as well.
Mr. Green kind of stole my my commentary. I don't think there's anything in here that says we have to do it immediately. We can vote, approve, and then do it in much later after red tape, after mains, after, the sub-saves will be up after that, further down the road.
Seeing no one, I'm sorry, Mr. McKinnon?
Pardon me. Je me demande si on pouvait.
I was wondering if, with the agreement of my honorable friend, maybe ask the subcommittee to deal with this motion and bring it back. Then we can get into discussion. As my colleague said, we are not necessarily against it, but we would like to do this in a structured manner. Maybe we can set this aside, Mr. Abu Taib, today, and then come back after a discussion at the subcommittee level.
From a procedural standpoint, we've got two options here. Number one, we have a motion in front of us. We could vote on that motion right now, or we could adjourn the debate on the motion if it is so moved, which would allow discussions to occur offline. So that's strictly up to this committee. If someone wants to perhaps move a motion, one option or the other, we can deal with that.
I would therefore move the adjournment of the debate.
We adjourn the debate? That's fine. Motion moved by Mr. McKinnon, seconded by...
It doesn't need a seconder.
We don't need a seconder? Okay. And we will...
So it's a question of this, do they want to report to this? They just want to do a voice call? Who's in favor, who's against?
My only question would be, we can just do this by a voice vote, or we can have it recorded. Strictly up to seeing...
All in favor?
Or we can simply do it this way. All in favor of adjourning the debate? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. I have I'll move another question. Minister, in your message at the outset that the department results report, the DRR, you mentioned the fact that your department equipped Environment and Climate Change Canada, ECCC, with a new application that provides Canadians with weather information and alerts in real time.
Just as as a point of privilege, I'm just curious as to the time now. We've now eaten into the hour that the minister's here, and my concern is, does he still now get his time back? Because that would have been 5 minutes for sure.
That's correct. We stopped the clock, actually, when the motion was made and debate started. So from a procedural standpoint, yes, he still does. I've given him 2 more minutes, Mr. Green.
Okay.
You have 2 minutes, sir.
Get sensitive about that.
Thank you. So, Minister, sorry about all this. Can you explain the point of this? In today's age, we have all smartphones or two with weather apps built into them. The private sector has already built these applications and tested them. So why the government is wasting taxpayers' money on things that already exist and then boasting about it as an accomplishment?
Well, thank you very much for that question. So open data is a movement by which data that is collected by government is available to the private sector and citizens in order to be able to create businesses and help grow the economy, or to be able to solve problems out in society. And so the example that you've provided is an app by the Canadian, by Environment and Climate Change Canada. But I mention that because we are a leader in the open data and open government movement, by which we make data available so it can be used productively by the public and by businesses to serve Canadians.
Well, we're trying to solve a problem here, Minister, and that is we don't. How much time?
30 seconds.
Okay, we have to stop competing with the private sector in a way or the other, and we've got money or resources available to us. We can allocate them to be used somewhere else. So what we're doing here is, I think we're carrying the same old-fashioned way, which is basically continue doing what we shouldn't be doing,
Yes.
and what you stated in your speech. So I would really like you to regard on that, to basically, I mean, put in resources where need to be, not just in cases like this.
We have a response, Madam Minister. We'll move on to another question. So if there are answers that you have yet to provide because of limited time, ask you to please supply those answers through the clerk at your earliest opportunity. We'll now go to Monsieur Drouin for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for taking the time to appear before this committee, and along with staff provided to us if we obviously if we have questions and we want more details. One of the issues that I've noticed over the past 10 years is when shared services was created, it was created under PSPC or reporting under PSPC. Now, this year or last year, technically, we've sort of put the IT branch from Treasury Board and SSC sort of together. How's that relationship, and what does this mean in terms of governance for Canadians and for the IT community, who also have often to deal with delivering services for Canadians?
Well, thanks for that question. The point of having a standalone Minister of Digital Government, I think, is to recognize really how important it is that we are able to serve Canadians in the means that they expect, which today means on a phone as well as other channels, but also to be able to do it quickly, securely, and effectively. And so the bringing together of different parts of IT and digital is what the point of shared services, the Canadian Digital Service, the CIO branch working together under a standalone ministry. And what I'm finding is that each of the groups have incredible dedication and competency in their own part of this. But the fact that we now meet together and we explore how Shared Services Canada, for example, is helping facilitate the delivery of policies that are put out and strategies put out by the CIO branch, and how Canadian Digital Service is actually doing some practical on-the-ground implementation of improvements. All of those are strengthening our government's ability to move more quickly in this digital transformation. I would like to say that Canada is actually not as much a laggard as the previous member had mentioned. We are actually leading in a number of ways on this kind of transformation. I'm proud of the work that the public servants in Canada have been doing. But it's challenging to change a culture where every department had its own authorities and its own silos, its own ability to do its own thing, when what we're trying to do is work more collaboratively and integrate some of the work that's being done digitally across government as a platform to be able to modernize. So I'm very encouraged by the progress that's being made, but this integration is critical to take a next step for that.
Mm-hmm. And one of the words that we often hear is open government, and we hear this in the IT community. We hear this with government, open government. But what does that mean, and how does it actually support the mandate of government?
Well, I'm going to have a quick response to that, and then turn it over to our CIO, Francis Bilodeau, to add. But open government is the concept that if government works closely with the public through civil society and individuals in the public, that we have a better engagement between government and the public. We have better accountability and transparency. We're utilizing the ideas and the objectives of members of the public, but more than that, open data also means that we provide data, as I was mentioning before, that government has collected for its own use, data that is not vulnerable, does not create any vulnerability on a privacy or security level, but the public sector, the private sector, businesses can then utilize that data and turn it into a business that they can supply services to Canadians and make money from it. So open data is very good for the economy, but it's also good for the trust between citizens and their government by having that sharing. And Francis, can you add to that?
Sure. I mean, I think the minister said it quite eloquently. But essentially, open government is about broader collaboration between the government, civil societies, and Canadians. It includes elements of open information, and so work has been done, for example, under the access to information regime to have more proactive publication. It includes elements of open data, and so within my organization, for example, we have the Open Government Portal, which pushes out a lot of information, for example, a lot of geospatial information, which can then be reused by either civil society or private sector for their own needs. And it leverages ongoing collaboration with civil society, for example, through the multi-stakeholder forum, which we've established, which brings civil society actors into the government to work with us on specific initiatives. And so some of the key tools we have are certainly the Open Government Portal, which is managed within the Office of the CIO. And then we, on a regular basis, develop Open Government National Action Plans. And so we've developed the 4th action plan and now are developing the 5th.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to Madame Vignola. 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci.
Thank you. I'm looking at the budgets. I'm trying to get a handle of this. I see you have the goal of transforming and simplifying technology services, reducing the number of centers to 7, going from 15 networks to just 1, going from 63 email systems to just 1, by providing technological services. Now, for the 485 data centers, how far back do these go? When were they created? Can I have some quick answers to that?
Data center program, c'est très important.
It's very important to improve this network. We have already transformed over a third.
To answer further.
Alors, les centres de données qui ont été...
Now, these data centers that have been transferred to Shared Services Canada, when it was created in 2011, are now 620. Where did they exist before the creation of shared services? Well, over the years, with the government, each department was responsible for its own infrastructure, so there was a consolidation, and that's important in terms of investments, because I think these data centers have a headquarters somewhere, they have a building. What does it mean to reduce them to only 7 centers in terms of financial and real estate investment? Now, the strategy to reduce it to 7 data centers has been reviewed to focus on the health of these applications and where they're situated. So we've created 4 data centers, the business data centers, and the idea is to consolidate them. I do not disagree with the importance of that step. I'm just wondering, what's the cost in the long run? These investments, will they really make any significant savings? And what's the end point? Now we have 4, you want 7 maximum. What's the end point of all this? Where are these data centers located? They are spread across Canada, and the strategy is really to shut them down in 2 ways. There are those that are at the end of their lease, some are just outdated, and so we will try to consolidate information in some data centers. Others are more risky. Those will be closed. So we don't really have a specific plan as far as when the 7 centers will be completed, how much money will be saved, because it will be all based on priorities. And the other issue I would like to give you some information on, just in terms of the space that will be saved, that's how we will be able to calculate the savings. There will be a lot more savings in energy. And as you said, in terms of the number of square feet required in these different locations. I also see that you're applying the principle of cost recovery. When a department uses shared services, these are billed and they have to refund the PSPC. So how are these cost recoveries done? Since the money is coming from the government and it's dedicated, the money comes, well, we have to bill Health Canada, the services used. The money is simply going from the left pocket to the right pocket. Now, the cost recovery principle, how can we use that to reduce costs for the government? I think it's just about reducing expenses. Once departments have to plan the service use, what part of the services they would use over a year. Some of the main services are supplied in shared services. Other services, when there are applications from different departments, some part of that money is recovered. Now, the definition of the word project means that there is a planning vision in place. You have essential projects. The word essential or important means, as far as I'm concerned, that, well, it is important. You can't do something without that basic principle. Coming up with these essential services and shared services, you require additional or supplementary budgets. I don't understand that. If these are essential services, essential projects that allow you to fulfill PSPC's mission, why are they not in the main budget estimates? Why do you want more money for projects that should have been planned beforehand, based on my understanding of what an essential project is?
Well, from the beginning, Shared Services Canada was not properly funded because in 2011, 2012, about $250 million was cut from its budget. So it's an organization that struggled in the beginning to provide the services. Our government put substantial money in 2016 and 2018 so that shared services could actually deliver services of IT and information management to the whole of the government of Canada.
Thank you very much. Mr. Green, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the preceding question. I think I'll pick up on that because it certainly speaks to a recent article that talked about some of the legacy IT industries, and it talked about the complex array of existing programs and services meant that future changes continue to provide Canadians with programs and services that they expect. But there's significant pressures on these systems, and you're facing some pretty significant challenges. This article cites that part of this problem is because officials don't look to upgrade these old systems so long as they continue to work, right? And so in another committee, in public accounts, I asked the Auditor General about the legacy, the nature of the legacy technology they had, and they stated that they actually were running on some DOS systems. And so my question to you is, in your mandate letter, you were asked to identify all core and at-risk IT platforms. How do you define core and at-risk? And how does this definition vary between federal organizations? Are you running on DOS still?
DOS, COBOL, yes. So thank you for that question. I mean, the reality is that there is work that we need to do because we, as a Canadian government, are completely committed to putting the Canadian at the center of what we do. And so, as I was saying earlier, that's not just a technical change we need to make, it's a continuing cultural change to work across government and focus on Canadians. And yes, there is a deficit in some of these older applications, some of the older software that is accumulated through the lack of investment over 15, 20 years. The Auditor General has pointed that out repeatedly, and our government listened. And so that's why that's why so much money has been dedicated to SSC to do the foundational infrastructure upgrades step by step by step. But it's also why we recognize that's not enough. And this focus on digital government is about bringing together all of the parties. So we don't have the policymakers
Thank you.
it's separate from the deliverers and CDS and
Thank you.
the foundation builders.
I only
and
have
SSE.
6 minutes, so I'm going to roll
Yeah.
on to the other questions. I appreciate that because I want to get specific. I want to know how many core and at-risk systems programs have you identified to date, and what is the estimated cost of updating all identified systems?
Okay, I'll pass that over to Madame Paquette, and perhaps also your question on how we define core and at-risk.
Francis will start. Francis.
So the minister's mandate letter does talk about core and at risk. There's no formal definition in policy, but this could generally be understood as being systems that support significant and important services and systems which are aging and as a result of which could potentially have outages or where we might have a limited capacity to update them and meet policy objectives because of the aging systems. And so this is something that's been put in the mandate letter. While there's no formal definition of this, there is within policy a definition around critical services, and those are generally defined as the ones that would have impact on economy, health, and the safety of Canadians. So we've now launched an exercise where we're trying to more systematically identify them. We do have some information around application health, but recently the clerk has established a DM committee on core services, and the minister, as well as this committee, will be working to more systematically identify those largest systems that are aging and at risk. We do know of a number.
And so, my concerns here are, through you, Mr. Chair, and to this committee, my concerns is that we have departmental reports and results that have, objectives and aims and yet no real key performance indicators to be able to measure the progress of the department if we haven't identified already what we're going to define broadly across the services as being at risk. Critical failure in IT is like a national security issue. And when I'm hearing about DOS and I'm hearing about these old legacy systems, I worked at a bank, I won't name it, but it ran DOS and it was a nightmare, and that was like almost 10 years ago. And so, my question is, like, once you've completed this task, when could we expect an update back to this committee once you have clear definitions so that when we, go to reflect on the progress of this committee, of your department, that we can actually see what has been done in this critical space? Because right now I'm not hearing a very comfortable answer in terms of being clear about just what kind of stage of critical, what they're calling rust out, I think in your briefing letter was, that we're facing here.
Minister.
Yeah, well, so thanks for that. And part of what digital government is now about is measurement. So we need baseline measures, and we do have a process of having plans and departmental plans and reports. And I think you're absolutely right. We need to do this based on the numbers. And as we accomplish this inventory, we will certainly have that reflected.
Is there a time frame? Well, I got my 10 seconds. Do you have a time frame when you're going to report back?
I think right now I would identify that we're in the planning stage. We do have information around application portfolio health, so I wouldn't want it to give the impression that we don't have line of sight at all around sort of the systems. System and applications fall within departments, and so they have the primary line of sight. On the infrastructure, SSC, through its consolidation, actually has much greater line of sight than we used to have, but we are in the planning phases around
Thank
that
you.
work.
Colleagues, we've got limited time because we do have another minister joining us in about 15 minutes, so I'm just going to make an arbitrary decision here. I'm going to try and get the entire round of questioning in, which would mean I'm going to ask all further questions in this round to be 3 minutes, and we'll leave 1 minute each for both the Green and the NDP party at the end. That should take us to the time we suspend while we wait for our next witnesses. Mr. Johari, or Mr. Abultev, I'm sorry, you have 3 minutes, please.
Good question, Minister. What are cloud services? If you were to define cloud services, what are they?
Well, cloud services are an improved storage capacity of Canadian data, and we have the SSC serves as a broker so that the ministries will have access to contracts to have cloud services provided by the private sector, primarily 40 different organizations that are poised to provide that service. And I'll turn it over to Madame Paquette for further detail.
So the cloud services are services offered, like the minister just said, by hyperscalers. And what SSC is doing is taking the opportunity to work with the private sector to offer modern, secure, and reliable infrastructure.
How much of data has the government has moved already to cloud so far?
So in terms of data, our journey to cloud have started a few years ago in the public cloud, where departments have started developing new applications. And we are now working with 4 Pathfinder departments to start moving protected B data to cloud. So we are at the beginning of our journey.
How much time you think we need? How many years down the road that we're able to be fully implemented this?
The cloud first policy is our direction, and every single department right now it's looking at the universe of their application to see which one will be a good candidate to cloud, and working with SSC to migrate those applications to cloud or to migrate them to an end-state data center if it's more appropriate for the said applications.
Quick question. In January 2020, Financial Post reported that from Wayne Smith, iterated, was the former chief statistician of Canada, that he's concerned about the strategy of storing sensitive Canadian citizen data in data centers owned by U.S. firms, and they are subject to the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act and Washington's ability to compel an American organization to turn over data under its control, regardless of the data location and without notifying Canada. Isn't that a security concern on a national level? And what are we dealing with? Because we're not engaging Canadian companies, we're engaging U.S. companies on the security services that we're using right now.
Well,
Unfortunately, there's only enough time for a very brief answer, Minister.
all sensitive information, Mr. Abul-Tayef, is called protected B, and that data will be in cloud services that is held and managed right here in Canada, because the protection of Canadians' information is a high priority for our government.
Thanks
Very much. Mr. Johari, you have 3 minutes.
Given the fact that I only got 3 minutes, I'm going to limit my question to Minister. Last Friday, you made an announcement about the next step of the Next Gen project. This has been a project that I've been following up since the 42nd Parliament. Can you shed some light and explain what this announcement was all about, and what are the next steps that you and your department is taking on?
Well, thanks for that question. It's so important that we can, as a Canadian government, pay public servants accurately on time. And as we all know, that there has been some challenges with that, with the Phoenix payroll system that was built in an old model, really, in terms of how we went about it as a government back in the early part of the 2000s. So we made a decision as a government a few years ago that we would replace that system with one that was designed and developed in a different way, in a way that's consistent with digital principles, meaning that we would not just spend years putting something together and then launch it only to find out that it was not fit for the purpose. We would actually do an iterative project where we are involving public servants, we're involving the unions, we're consulting widely, doing piece at a time to understand which of the suppliers can actually deal with the complexity of federal government pay. And so that's what NextGen is we have reached a stage where we have selected a primary supplier, which is SAP. And I also want to just quickly make the point that while Phoenix was narrowed in scope to meet a budget and a timeline, and we saw what that did for us, we are not taking that approach. We are not narrowing it. In fact, this will be a hire to retire, a full HR and pay application for our public servants. And we are now in a phase of putting together a pilot project to see whether SAP's technologies can work with the complexities of our federal government pay. And
about 30 seconds.
The
selection of SAP doesn't necessarily mean that we've excluded the other two application providers, or would they be working in parallel?
No, you're absolutely right. They will be continuing to work with the Government of Canada because at this point we have not locked ourselves into the overall project with one vendor. We have committed to doing a significant pilot project in parallel with the pay still being provided by Phoenix so that we're managing any risks of the pilot not being successful. We'll continue engaging with the two other vendors, and this will be a staged forward movement to having a pay system that really works
very
for
much.
our public servants.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Boutte, if you have 3 minutes.
You stated, in your speech that there's 20,000 technical individuals working in the government of Canada. What that present as a percentage of the total employees?
Wow, a significant percentage, but I would say it's somewhere in and around 5%.
18,000 plus applications. How many people does it take to support the 18,000 application being run by the federal government?
Well, the number that you mentioned, just over 20,000 are people that are identified as computer technology public servants, and they are the ones who would be supporting the applications. And
These applications are run by the government versus the private sector.
The 20,000 that you mentioned are all public servants, so they are within the different departments as well as the ones represented
But
here.
supporting 18,000 plus applications, how many of these does the government run? And there's some of them are over 30 years old. So how many we still have dealing with at this point of time out of the 18,000?
Well, I will ask my officials to add to my comments, but my understanding is that those 18,000 are currently employed, the 18,000 applications, and part of why we have a Minister of Digital Government is to move forward and being more effective in how we use information technology.
Thank you. To add to my question, how many of the 30 years old and older, and how many public-facing applications are more than 10 years old?
Okay, so that kind of question, I think Mr. Bilodeau could answer.
Sure. And I mean, I need to sort of get back to you on exact numbers on this. I mean, the applications are generally run out of departments. These applications are being used for all sorts of different things and tasks. We track overall application health, and we can certainly return with more information on the overall application health.
So how many of Government of Canada applications can Canadians access through their mobile services? Any idea?
Not off the top of my head.
I'll go back to my 20,000 figure of public employees. I would rely on the minister to answer the question is, what does that represent as a percentage of total employees in the public sector?
Yeah, so it's 270,000 employees in the public sector. Yeah. Yeah.
So now that means
I'm sorry that we're completely out of time. I do want to have an opportunity for Madame Vignola. You only have 1 minute, ma'am, but please go ahead.
Very quickly, in your mandate letter, you have to review all the IT basic core systems and those that are at risk. What level have you reached in that review? This is what we had mentioned as core and at-risk services. As we said, we're currently reviewing the health of these applications. If we're talking about major at-risk systems, we've just set up a Deputy Ministers Committee, and we are working on planning. I cannot really give you a specific date because we are still planning. Great. Earlier you said, Mr. Bilodeau, that you have a file on the health of these applications. Are those files easily or readily accessible for review? Yes, we can give you information. We have an application on which departments provide information on the health of their applications.
omitted or forgot to get Mr. Kuzmierczak his 3 minutes. So, sir, 3 minutes is yours.
Chair. Thank you very much. And Minister, you had mentioned in your remarks that CDS is working closely to improve the experience of Canadians with disabilities. And we know how frustrating even simple surveys online can be for people that have disabilities, how challenging and frustrating the experience could be. How does accessibility play a role within CDS, and how do we measure how we're doing to improve accessibility?
Well, thanks for that question, and that's a huge priority for our government as a whole, is to have more inclusive services and to really to encourage people of all abilities to be as productive as possible. And so one thing that we're doing as a government through SSC is we have a program called the Accessibility, Accommodation, and Adaptive Computer Technology Program. And so that has the objective that all of our tools, all of the tools that public servants use, should be able to be used by people of all accessibility challenges. And so we have public servants who are making sure that the equipment is actually usable, even in your MP office, for example. Your equipment could be used by someone who has visual impairment or hearing impairment. And so we've, in the recent budget, into the 2019 budget, we've asked for more funding to expand that program so the AACT team can do further training of other public servants that have the goal of accessibility improvements.
Perfect segue to my next question, which is what is the funding that we have available for that program? Or what funding is available to improve accessibility in our department?
So I'll turn that over to officials in SSC.
And how much do you need?
The funding that was made available to us in budget 2019, as the minister alluded to, was $2.7 million per year for ongoing, on an ongoing basis.
And how much would you need?
That's the funding we're working with the funding that's being allocated to us.
Allocated to you. Okay. And then one last quick question is before an application or a program is rolled out, what does the consultation process look like to bring insight and input from Canadians with disabilities into that actual program?
Very brief answer, if possible.
So this would be in the ministry. So the different departments have the ownership and leadership over the applications they use to deliver their services. And as you're probably aware, we have a very robust consultation program and a first accessibility legislation that we will be accessible by default as a Government of Canada. So there's been a major consultation with people with disabilities. And I'm actually very proud of that part of our government's record.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. Mr. Green, you can bring us home. You've got 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much. In your opening statement, you referenced the challenges of our constituency staff in connecting Canadians to the critical services of government. And we see here reference in a fall 2017 report of the Auditor General on the CRA's call centers found that the call center agents answered only 1/3 of the calls to the call center, largely due to call volume. In my riding of Hamilton Centre, we will serve hundreds of people a week on filing very simple tax forms to be able to get them back their returns. And yet with this COVID epidemic, our concern, our very real concern, is that as we get into social distancing, we won't be able to maybe provide the same quality of face-to-face service that we have in the past. What efforts are you taking to ensure Canadians can access CRA services through call centers and online?
So calls the CRA.
Very sorry, but I'm going to have to say, in essence of time, that's a great question, but if you can provide the answer to this committee through the clerk in written form, we'll make sure we distribute that and share that with the rest of the committee.
Very happy to do that, Mr.
I appreciate that very much, Minister. Minister, to you and your officials, thank you for being here. Colleagues, if we had your attention just for a minute, we'll be suspending for just a few moments while we wait for our next group of witnesses to appear. I do need about 5 minutes at the end of the second hour just for some very quick committee business. Minister, once again, thank you very much. Hope to see you again. And we are suspended. Colleagues, I'll call this meeting to order. Now, colleagues, you know the normal procedure is we have opening statements from the ministers appearing before this committee. They normally are 10 minutes in length. I have spoken with Minister Anand, and she has agreed to make a somewhat truncated opening statement so we can get into questions as quickly as possible. And of course, I think that's highly appropriate. This is the first time Minister Anand has appeared before this committee. So, Minister, if you care to give your brief opening statements, and we'll go into questions immediately upon their completion. Minister, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you and good morning. Monsieur le Président, je tiens à vous féliciter.
Mr. Chair, I have to congratulate you and also the Vice Chair and all my colleagues on your nomination to this important committee. I feel very honored to have been invited by Prime Minister to join his cabinet and to serve as Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Are Bill Matthews, Deputy Minister, Marty Muldoon, Chief Financial Officer, Michael Vandergrift, Associate Deputy Minister, André Fillon, Assistant Deputy Minister, Marc Lemieux, Assistant Deputy Minister. Also, PSBC, as you know, is the government's central purchasing agent, linguistic authority, and real property manager. We are also the treasurer, accountant, integrity advisor, and pay and pension administrator. PSBC acts as the engine that runs government. We often play an unseen but central role in enabling the work that our government does here at home and around the world. As an example, and especially important in today's world, we are supporting the government in its response to the coronavirus outbreak. Among other things, we handled the chartering of 3 planes, which have brought Canadians home, as well as contracts for nursing services, materials, and support for returning Canadians. I am looking forward to speaking with you today. I'm looking forward to your questions. Monsieur le Président, voilà ce...
Mr. Chair, these are just some of the activities that are ongoing in support of the government's activities and in obtaining results, positive results for Canadians. Honourable colleagues, thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your economy of words. I do appreciate it. You're going to get more questions from our colleagues as a result of your short statement. Colleagues, that we will, just because it has been a truncated statement, and you do have copies of her official 10-minute opening statement, I would ask for a quick consensus that the speaking notes of the minister be deemed read and appended to the evidence of today's meeting. If I have your agreement on that, thank you very much. That way it will be part of the official record. We'll now go directly into questions. Mr. McCauley, you have 6 minutes.
Right, welcome, Minister.
Thank you so
Gentlemen,
much.
welcome back. I see you've brought a near army with you. I congratulate you. Minister Bryson, when he was here, brought 40 staffers along once. You're in second place
Smaller
now.
army.
I know.
Small but mighty.
Page 14 of the DRRs, there's a comment about, I'll read it. Contract was awarded for a 3-year lease of 2 emergency offshore towing vessels. Both vessels entered into service. Now, this is part of a CITT dispute, so to speak. Just wondering if you could comment on why we chose these 2 tugboats this is for BC, for the Offshore Protection Plan, that were non-compliant with the original bid.
Well, thank you so much for the question, because it gives me an opportunity to stress that our national shipbuilding strategy has contributed
This is not part of
$1.2
Minister,
billion
this is not
to our
part of the
economy.
national shipbuilding strategy. This is the OPP where PSBC ignored their own RFP and granted or awarded a non-compliant bid to Irving over Indigenous-led companies or other companies. Just wondering why.
Well, thank you for the clarification. The decisions that were taken regarding those vessels, those ships, were as a result of a memo to Cabinet. And for further elaboration, I will ask my Deputy Minister to step in.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll be
briefly.
very brief on this one. This is a procurement process competitively awarded. The department actually feels it was a fair evaluation. It's
Let me
gone to
just ask you,
CITT.
the Bullard poll, do you believe that the two tugs have qualified under
Yes,
the bullard
Mr. Chair,
pole
we
for
do,
international
and-
standards of measuring a bullard pole?
Yes,
Just
Mr. Chair.
please put it on record, yes
Yes,
or no.
Mr. Chair, we do, and we have done the evaluation twice now in response to CITT findings.
How much-
We struck a second evaluation team, brand new people, did it a second time,
How much are
and
we
it's come out the
spending
same
in
time.
the legal costs on the challenge against CITT?
I can't say what the cost for the legal fees of this
Could you
challenge
get
will be,
back
but
to
we're.
us, to the committee, please?
I
with an
can
answer?
when it's all wrapped up, Mr. Chair, but
No,
this
can
is
I ask
just a
right
live
now,
file.
get back to us on what the up-to-date costs are, because I realize this will be going for a while.
Absolutely.
Right. The delayed AOPS, we heard a story just another week, they're delayed once again. How much is the delay costing taxpayers?
The AOPS, to be clear, is a first-in-class vessel. We're
Please,
expecting
Minister, just because of
increasing
time,
efficiency
Just
as a result
please, what
of
is
our
the added
AOPS.
cost to taxpayers for the delays?
The delays are actually not overly impacting our costs because we are fully costed out on that. Bill, did you want to step on?
Let me just put it in context. The PBO has stated that every single month the delays for the CSC, for example, is going to be a $250 million added cost to the taxpayers. Will there be an added cost to the taxpayers for the continual delays for the AOPS?
So, Mr. Chair, I'll start, but I may turn to Mr. Filion for some additional detail. The AOPS contract, ship number 1, is very close to being delivered this spring. We're not anticipating extra costs because of that delay. That's just delays related to a
There'll be
first
no
ship.
extra costs.
The service combatant reference you made.
Okay, no, I'm not talking about the CSCs. I'm regarding the AOPS, please. We're short on time. We just want to stick to the questions. So you're saying no added cost to the taxpayers?
My understanding is no added
continual
cost,
delays
but I
for
just
the
want to turn
AOPS.
to Mr. Filion to confirm.
I think it's hard to answer this question without going back to basics about this contract. It's a cost reimbursable incentive fee contract with a ceiling. There's a ceiling that is established for the delivery of the six ships. We are still working within the ceiling that has been established for the 6 ships, despite some of the challenges that have been encountered in the delivery of AOPS number 1. This is the first ship of a class. It's also a first ship of a yard, a brand new yard that had to do some reinvestments. We're very close to delivery. But again, I think we're tracking in terms of the overall budget ceiling, which has been established.
I'm going to move on. In the SUPs, we have 444,000 transfers, various organizations for innovative approaches to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in government operations. Fine, we've studied that in committee. I'm looking at your DRR, though, and it actually states on page 36, the targets are actually getting worse. We've gone to achieve targets of 40% reduction, I think it was, by 2030. Now it's changed to 2021, but there's no actual target set. So you're asking for money, $444,000 for something, but your target is not applicable.
Well, thank you for the question.
How can we be asking for money when we're not actually showing results
I'd
for that
like
money?
to respond to your question by talking firstly about the environmental considerations that we are introducing.
Minister, please.
To
the
our
question is
procurement
specifically on the
processes.
supplementary estimates of
And-
444,000 requested, which is fine. We've done a study in that. The government, PSPC has been the only department that in the past has actually set tangible goals for the reduction. I congratulate them on that. But your DRR shows no target. How can we expect to be asking for money when we're not? The government's not fulfilling its roles under the Treasury Board framework for results by not putting in a targeted result.
Well, thank you for the question again. What we're doing is prioritizing our commodities that will have the greatest overall impact in reducing GHG,
The question is, you're coming
grass.
to committee for cash, but you're not stating a target. Why are we not putting targets? Why are we not setting targets for this money?
If I can now, just in the essence of time, Madam Minister, you have been asked a question. I know it may be somewhat difficult to do in the allotted time you have before us, but I would ask that you could provide some sort of an answer to this committee, to Mr. Macaulay's question, through the clerk at your earliest opportunity. With that, then, we will move on to Mr. Weiler for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the Minister and the army of witnesses that are coming to speak to our committee today. One of the things that you mentioned in your statement that you provided to us is some of the work that's ongoing for greening of government operations. And I was hoping you could speak a little bit. So you provided some examples in Toronto and Vancouver, but you have a plan to by 2022 to have all government buildings powered by clean electricity. So I was hoping you could speak a little bit more to how the ministry is going to accomplish this.
Well, thank you very much for the question. As I wanted to say in my opening remarks, it's very important to realize that our government is committed to a sustainable environment and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And how that plays out in PSPC is very important. We are, as you know, in charge of a large component of real estate, and we're developing a strategy to power federal buildings with 100% clean electricity where available by 2022. We're modernizing our energy system that serves government buildings in the National Capital Region as well, which is outside of the buildings that I visited in Toronto that are mentioned in my opening statement. What else we are doing? Well, we are investing in major retrofits to federal buildings that will contribute to low carbon operations. And as the ministry in charge of the government's fleet, we are working to replace vehicles in that fleet with green alternatives, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and putting in place the infrastructure that is needed when you have a fleet that is operating on a hybrid basis. And so you can see that across the portfolio, across government, we are taking this very seriously.
And just kind of as a follow-up to that, you also mentioned in the statement here that where clean electricity is not yet available, we are encouraging that industry. So I was hoping you could just speak a little bit to how the government's going to be encouraging that industry.
Well, as you know, we come into contact with contractors on a daily basis, essentially, when we are dealing with the federal real property portfolio. And so it is very much a central component of our negotiations and discussions with our contractors. I'll ask my Deputy Minister if he'd like to speak to this point.
Thank you, Minister. And Mr. Chair, just a quick addition to this. Obviously, to power federal buildings with clean electricity, you have to have a clean grid. And the federal government is a large consumer because of the footprint we have from a real property perspective. So if the federal government is able to indicate to partners such as provinces that we are wanting to buy clean electricity and talk about incentives from a market perspective, we're a big player in that market. So it's an incentive base.
And just switch gears a little bit here. I was hoping you could provide an update on the national shipbuilding strategy and particularly how much has been spent to date and how many jobs have been created so far.
Well, thank you so much. I was trying to intervene earlier regarding our NSS because it is such an important component of our overall operations relating to our procurements. This strategy contributes $1.2 billion annually to the economy and over 12,000 jobs per year. I've had the opportunity to visit both the VSY and the Irving Shipyard on each of our coasts and speak with our management teams out there. Through fully costed and funded plan and the successful management of the NSS, we are delivering for Canadians. It's an honor, really, to see the importance of that NSS strategy taking shape with the delivery of various ships, especially on the West Coast, where I know you're from.
Great. Well, I was hoping you could speak a little bit more to the work specifically taking place at CSPAN.
Well, CSPAN, as you know, central to what's happening out there on the West Coast. We have delivered the first 2 offshore fishery science vessels to the Canadian Coast Guard, with the delivery of the 3rd vessel expected this summer. In addition, 4 Arctic and offshore patrol ships are under construction, with the first being delivered to the Navy early this year, and build work is underway for the JSS, the Joint Support Ship, and design work on the Canadian Surface Combatant is progressing.
I know you and your team have been working hard on defense procurement, and I was hoping you can give us just a general overview of some of the equipment we're going to be providing our defense agencies with.
Well, thank you so much for asking that question because our record on defense procurement is extensive. We have in place a fully costed defense policy. We launch of a future fighter jet procurement for 88 modern fighters, delivery of the first interim jets, delivery of the first fixed wing search and rescue aircraft, first large vessels in the water designed and built under the NSS, as I've mentioned, testing the first Arctic patrol ship for the Navy, expected to take delivery this spring, and I have others on my list, but in the interest of time, I'll let you ask any follow-ups you might have.
Don't have time for a follow-up, but I appreciate it once again. The economy of your words. Madame Vignola, you have 6 minutes, please.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. We appreciate that. I will come back to the supplemental expenditures budgets and you're asking for $8.1 million for space. This year, we've solved some of the problems linked to Phoenix were solved in 98%. Last year, you asked for money, and in that case, you said, given some of the problems related to Phoenix and some of the reaction coming from retired people, you needed more personnel. This year, why is it necessary to have $8 million if you have decided to maintain these new employers? And that's what explains the 98%. So why is the 8 million not part of the main estimates? Because it's becoming a recurrent problem. Thank you. I will answer in English.
Accommodation costs for employees who provide these pension services. It's funding for accommodation relating to the administration of the pension system, largely due to the increase in personnel capacity that resulted from our desire to eliminate the backlog in the Phoenix pay system. And I'll ask my deputy in case he has something further to add.
Merci. Juste pour
Thank you. I would just add a little point. It was just a way to establish the real cost for the benefits.
To make sure that the pension fund is properly charged, the full cost in terms of what it requires is required to administer it.
Donc, ce que j'entends, c'est que là, il y a eu...
So, if I understand, there have been other increases in personnel that explains the $8.1 million. And that henceforth, things have stabilized and there will be no further supplements requested since we are in a position to better plan. Is that what you mean? No?
What he said. We have rebuilt the capacity to over 2,000 compensation advisors. And why that is important is because we have, and it's my top priority, and I wanted to say this in my opening statement, to stabilize the Phoenix pay system and to eliminate the backlog. So this is part of that process to ensure that we can meet the goal of eliminating the backlog in the Phoenix pay system. Bill.
Juste pour, merci, pour clarifier.
Thank you. Just to further clarify, this amount here, it's for administering the pension system. It's not really for Phoenix. It's something different. This is something we do each year to establish the real cost in managing the pension system after doing a financial audit to establish the actual cost. Well, maybe it's my idea of what mistaken budget is, because the cost shouldn't really change that much from one year to the other in managing pensions. I ask the same question. Why can't we do some planning beforehand to include that in the main budget?
I've come into this portfolio as of November 20th. So some of these changes in budgetary requirements and adjustments, as Bill suggests, are preceding my time as the minister. But I will say that they are, from my understanding, largely adjustments based on our development of the program, based on our desire and my personal desire to ensure that we can move forward as quickly as possible in eliminating the backlog. Bill.
C'était vraiment une question de processus pour.
I think it's just in establishing departmental budgets. Most of the budgets are established in a regular manner with the main budgetary estimates, but there are others where we use a different process to adjust the figures in the course of the year. In this case, that's what's happening here. Each time we do an audit to come up with the actual cost, we use the supplemental budgets in order to boost the department's resources.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. How many public servants have experienced data errors caused by the Phoenix Pay system in the fiscal year 2018 and 2019, and how does that compare to the year previous, 2016 to 2017, during which the time the Phoenix system was implemented?
Well, thank you so much. Our system and our process tracks transactions as opposed to the precise number of individuals. So when we have an issue relating to a pay problem, it's on a transaction by transaction basis. So what we're aiming to do is to focus on those transactions and reducing the backlog of transactions.
So as of today, how many pay transactions for PSPC employees need to be processed?
Bill, do you want to speak to PSPC?
Certainement, je peux parler. Sorry, we're back in English. In terms of PSPC's actual complement as a department, we are now, like all departments, on the pod system. So there's a pod that's actually used to process our transactions. Since last year, when we put the pod in, we have actually achieved a reduction of about 30% in terms of PSPC statistics. And I believe we are now at about 45,000 public servants who are part of the backlog in PSPC. Sorry, 45,000 transactions that are part of the backlog, and that's down 33% over the previous year.
How many of them are having significant financial impact versus collective agreement renewals? Because I can tell you, I can assure you that for public service workers who have a delayed payment, would still have mortgages and bills to pay, this is creating, as I'm sure you well are aware, significant burden. So I'm wondering if you're tracking the scale of the significance of the financial impact on the workers.
Again, in my opening statement, I wanted to stress the importance of the Phoenix Pay system to me personally and to my ministry. It is the top priority for me, given the stress and the hardship that families have had to endure as a result of the issues that have arisen. And so, in terms to answer or address your question, we have reduced the backlog of transactions.
I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, specifically, it's a very important question about the scale of the financial impact and the significant nature of the impact. Are you in your data? To understand you're not tracking individuals, you're tracking transactions. What would be the order of magnitude that would make a transaction significant enough for you to note?
I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but we have been able to reduce our backlog of transactions with financial implications by 52%. There are various types of issues relating to the Phoenix Pay system, all of which, in my view, would cause stress, whether it's parental leave, disability leave, student pay, collective agreement implementation. I personally don't see there to be a threshold that is too too small to cross.
That is a fair and seemingly honest statement. Have you settled compensation for all employees affected by Phoenix?
We are in the process of.
So the answer is no, you have not?
We are in the process of working very hard to ensure that all problems associated with Phoenix, regardless of how they arose or what they relate to, are settled. As I said, it's a very large priority for me as a minister.
What kind of supports do you offer employees who have these pay issues?
Well, employee wellness is a very important issue for us. Personally, are you speaking about employees who are operating and working in pay centers, or are you speaking about employees who are actually, let's say...
Those that are impacted by Phoenix, the ones that have significant financial burden, and I know you've suggested that there's a range of it and they're all burdens, but I would suggest that some are probably more acute than others. I'm asking you, what supports do you have in place for people who are facing significant financial burdens?
Well, what we have done is we have put a priority on certain types of pay issues. And so we've ensured that public servants facing problems can request emergency payments. We've put in place a new claims process for current and former employees to request compensation for financial costs and lost income. We focused on priority files, so parental leave, disability leave, student pay, collective agreements implementation.
How have you focused on those files?
For that, in particular, I will turn
and
it
if I
over
can
to
addend that, if I can actually add on to that, how are you addressing those acute priority files? Because I called it financially significant, and you called it priorities, but I'm glad to see that there is a designation for it. Do those get the expedited compensation? Because my concern, Mr. Chair, is that if you have processes in place for which people can apply, that does not equate to their actual compensation.
Just before handing it over to Bill, yes, we actually do put a priority on that, and largely through the PayPod model, which we have seen work very well, which is an innovation that came out of Miramichi Pay Center.
What's the turnaround on that? I file a claim, I'm in really dire financial need. How long can I expect before I get compensated?
Can I turn it over to my deputy for those precise details?
Sure, Mr. Chair, I just want to check in.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. The answer is it depends, and I think we should probably maybe come back to this because Mark, my colleague Lemieux at the end, can offer you an explanation of the prioritization process. But just to further support what the minister said,
on that answer in a written form through the clerk to the members. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I'm going to go now to 4-minute rounds, so we have an opportunity to get a complete round in that would allow both Madame Vignola and Mr. Green to have 2 minutes each at the end of your intervention. So we'll go to 4-minute rounds, starting with Mr. McCauley.
Go back to the DRRs. On page 1 of the departmental report, near the last paragraph, enhanced guidelines for its building projects now exceed existing minimum accessibility codes and standards for government and industry, which is great. But when I look at the actual DRR 4, it says percentage of buildings that provide features to support universal accessibility, no target for last year, and no actual results for last year. So I'm trying to, again, it's just back to the process of, again, we're approving money, we're trying to figure out what the results are, but the own plan published by the department is not setting goals. So what is the process going to be to improve this? And I'll just go back. The DRRs for your department, 53% of goals were met from the last year that we had reporting. 46.5% the goals were either not met or the department didn't even bother setting goals. So what are we going to do to improve that?
I was just waiting for the question there. So it is very important to publish clear metrics to measure government performance on procurements. That's a priority for me.
And it's part of the Treasury Board framework for results.
And I was just going to say that it is some of the metrics that we are commenting on in the DRR are requests from Treasury Board that we provide metrics on these items. We are taking significant steps in the area, but those metrics have not fully been put in place yet. We are implementing, for example, an electronic procurement strategy that will make it easier and faster for us to be able to collect data on some of the items that we are working on.
I just want to move on to a couple other parts of the DRR. Page 15, average number of qualified bidders on complex competitive procurement processes has no targets. And just trying to figure out how we're setting that as a goal, but without a target. And then it also sets no past history. And then the average days to award level 1, level 2 complex are actually getting worse every single year with no targets.
Well, thanks again.
And again, the department comes before us every time we ask, what is the money being for? But the department is not even following the government's own guidelines of setting targets. So I'm asking why? And are we going to see your departmental plans, do they reflect this past practice of coming asking for money but not actually setting targets as is required? Or have they been changed so that they actually present to MPs to know what we're actually voting on, but also to taxpayers to see what they're getting for the taxpayers' money?
I appreciate the concern as I continue to work very hard as minister. I am going to be seeking to publish clear metrics to measure government performance. I understand the importance of targets. I understand the importance of KPIs. And that is one of the reasons why I am very supportive of our e-procurement strategy, so that we can actually start to track suppliers and precise metrics relating to suppliers, how many Indigenous suppliers, how many women
I just have one last
suppliers,
quick question
etc.
on the subspees. Reinvestment of revenues for sale of transfer real property.
How about a written answer for that, if you can?
All right, I'm just waiting for the question. What was the question on that?
Sorry.
I had another, well, what is it for? Maybe you can put it in writing
We
for
will
us.
put it in writing
I
and
know
we'll
you've
get
got
it
the
to you.
Treasury Board's
We'll put it in
applications
writing.
and all the backups. So it
Thank you
shouldn't
very
take
much.
too long, hopefully.
Mr. Duan, you have 6 minutes, or 4 minutes, I'm sorry, 4 minutes, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, thank you for appearing before this committee. I know it's your first time, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. And thank you for bringing the folks that we've come to know over the past few years to this committee. I want to touch on a point that Mr. McCauley brought in his previous round of questioning, and had to do with the DRRs and the lack of greenhouse goals in the DRR. So is it that the department does not have any greenhouse gas goal reductions for their properties, or is it just that it's not included in the DRRs?
Actually, I'm looking at page 36 of the DRRs. Our target was 40%, and our actual results were 54.3% on federal infrastructure spending relating to social, economic, and environmental policies. So I would just like to indicate that there are places in the report, throughout the report, where we are able to provide the targets and we're exceeding those targets.
Can I just elaborate on that for one moment, please? Minister touched on it. The target was actually exceeded. And that 40% target the Minister referred to for greenhouse gas emissions reductions was by 2030, and we've actually done it 10 years ahead of schedule. So that's a great success story for the department, and the results are on page 36. What we're planning next on that front is to continue to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Related to these supplementary estimates, there's two things I would highlight for you. The money we're requesting was referenced earlier, Mr. Chair. It's for two projects. Number one is this department is responsible for a lot of heritage buildings, and the exterior of heritage buildings is a unique challenge from an energy efficient perspective, so we're doing some studying on that. So it's a study that Treasury Board actually awarded money to the department through a competitive process. It was a little internal competition. So we were successful on that one. And there's a second one related to CO2 recapture in server rooms that we're testing out in Quebec. So the money in these supplementary estimates, excuse me, Mr. Chair, is related to a mini competition Treasury Board Secretariat ran to generate new thinking in this area. And those are the two things targeted here.
Great, thank you. Since we're speaking of heritage building, we're trying to renovate one just across the, neighboring this building here, and I'm somebody who's just renovated his bathroom. You have a plan, you want to do something, and then you start opening walls, and then surprises come along. And I'm just wondering, as we are moving forward with the renovation of the parliamentary precinct, have we learned some lessons from renovating West Block, and how are we continuing to being online, and how do we make sure that we continue to be on budget and on time?
Well, thank you for the question. I appeared 2 weeks ago in front of PROC to talk exactly about the point, and I was so pleased to be able to say that we have completed 24 key projects on time and on budget, talking about the Wellington building, talking about West Block, talking about the renovations to the Senate of Canada building. We are on top of it, and I'm so pleased to be able to speak so positively about the professionals that work in my department every single day.
Thank you, and I know it hires a lot of construction workers in the National Capital Region, which I'm a member of Parliament representing that. Minister, you may not have time to fully answer that question, but
Ask the question.
we implemented pay pods a few years back. Just wondering if you could provide an update to this committee, if you don't have time verbally, perhaps in a written statement.
If you could do that in a written response, Minister, I would appreciate it greatly. Thank you so much. We'll go next to Mr. Macaulay for 4 minutes, please.
Forgive me, Mr. Muldoon or Mr. Matthews. Were you answering my question on the reinvestment?
The real estate?
No, the 440 referred to was the previous question.
The
about
reinvestment of revenues.
No, but I'm happy to answer that now.
Yeah,
if you...
please. Yeah, just brief.
You go ahead.
So the department actually, as you know, Mr. Chair, maintains a large portfolio of real property. When we are actually able to sell real property, we are able to reinvest that money in our portfolio. So the money referred to in the supplementary estimates, if I recall correctly, Mr. Chair, and the CFO can correct me, relates to a transaction with Canada Lands on Front Street. So that's that funding coming through. And the department basically is seeking permission to reinvest that through this process
Right, that's
into the broader portfolio.
The Treasury Board process. So I'm asking, what's that going to be reinvested in, or what are you seeking to reinvest in?
So it's a broader portfolio issue. It doesn't get tied to one specific project. So when it's just a source of funds, and so it's part of the bank account is the way I would describe it, Mr. Chair.
Right, but again, this is the issue that we have is you come before Parliament asking permission or approval to spend the money. We're asking what the money's being for, or what the money is for, but you don't have an answer. And it goes back to, again, the transparency issues that we have, again, that parliamentarians are looking for answers, what we're voting to approve, but we don't know. So I'm asking, what is this money going to be used for? Are you asking just for blanket approval to spend at your discretion, or is the plan behind it? I know there's a plan behind it because you have to have it approved by the Treasury Board, and you've submitted the backup, so what is it for?
I'd like to say that, to put this in context, we operate and maintain federal buildings across the entire country. We provide accommodation to 260,000 public servants.
There's backup information that you would have made to Treasury Board for this money, so you know what it's being used for. What is it being used for? We're just asking, again, when you ask for approval for Parliament, we have the right to ask what this money is for. You've asked for a Treasury Board, you've provided the risk analysis, you've provided the financial appendices to go with the application. So please, what is it for?
So, Mr. Chair, I would characterize the funding formula a little differently than the member has. We put forth a plan to Treasury Board which covers all of our buildings, major investments as well. Treasury Board then looks at the money we can reinvest from other sources, this being one of them, and then we are effectively funded for the balance. So if members have the idea that when we resell, it's project by project.
Or for renos?
It's for...
To try and give a complete answer to this.
It's for significant reinvestment. This is recapitalization, but it's part of the pot. So if members are visualizing a building by building, project by project that you will attach to reinvestment, that's not the way the model works, Mr. Chair. It's part of the pot.
That's fair. In the DRR, probably running out of time, you mentioned there's a certain amount of electric vehicle. Is that solely for the government-owned cars, or can other people plug in and use it?
That's actually a very good question because we are just in the middle of
I know we're
trying to
switching over.
convert the
Yeah.
government's fleet and
Right.
developing a plan for the infrastructure relating to the plugins. I have a plug-in vehicle at home and we have this problem. So I don't think we have taken decisions on the plug-in usability or who's going to be able to use it. But Bill, you could.
Certainly, Minister. The recharging stations are in a variety of locations. Where they're in a public place, where public has access, public can recharge. Obviously, if
Is
it's
there
in a
a
more
charge or like a credit card, or how's it?
it's just there for use. I'm not aware of one where there's a charge. Obviously, if the recharging station is a secure zone, you wouldn't have public access for that.
Yeah, okay.
We'll go to
Thanks.
Monsieur Drouin. 4 minutes, please.
It would be Mr. Majid, actually, but...
Mr. Chair. Minister, I'll be remiss if I don't ask a question about Phoenix. This has been a portfolio that I've been interested in following since the 42nd Parliament. I had an opportunity to ask Mr. Murray about the next gen, so I'm going to go back to you and ask about, briefly, you touched on the amount of reduction, but mainly it's come as a result of what's been believed to be the PayPod implementation. Can you share with us how effective this PayPods has been? And also, on the same vein, I only got 4 minutes. If you could talk about the support, and I'm going to follow on Mr. Green's intervention, the support that they are there for the employees. Although we may not know the extent of the impact on the employees, but are there any support mechanism there for them? Thank you.
So the PayPod model, as I mentioned, came through the grassroots of our Phoenix Pay System employees. And it was developed in Miramichi. And essentially what it is it's a dashboard. And it allows the employees who are working to see the full set of issues relating to a single employee. And we have heard from both employees affected and employees in the pay center that this has been a very effective way to address all issues relating to Phoenix, relating to one person. And so the PayPods have been very, very effective. There have been concerns in the past relating to how effective they will be overall. Can we transfer the PayPod model outside, which we would really love to ensure occurs in terms of greater efficiencies? Could you clarify what your second question was?
Going back to PayPod, is PayPod now part of the next-gen evaluation process as well, or is it being focused right now on Phoenix?
Next Gen is a separate system altogether than what we are currently using. I'm sure Minister Murray told you that we need to move forward on Next Gen, but from our perspective, we are running a parallel system, and it is the system, the Phoenix Pay System, that we are working on in terms of reducing and eliminating the backlog. And I'll ask my deputy if he has anything to add.
Certainly, just to be very quick, Mr. Chair, the PayPods are a vehicle we use to reorganize our work to deal with the backlog. NextGen is a new procurement. They're going through pilot phase, but they're going to be testing live, fresh pay transactions as part of the test case. PayPods are very much about the existing backlog and how we work through those, so they're not related at this stage.
Okay, great. And the second question was around the support that's being offered to some of our employees in dealing with the Phoenix Pay issues that they have.
So, again, employee wellness is very important. We need these employees to be able to function in an environment that allows us to stabilize the system and eliminate the backlog. And so what we've done in our pay center in collaboration with the local union is to introduce successful initiatives to promote exactly what you're asking about, employee well-being. We have an initiative called the Organizational Wellness Initiative, and it allows management in the pay center to assess and track wellness of staff through an annual survey and address areas where change is needed. I personally have been in contact with the employees at the Miramichi Pay Center, and they are very enthusiastic about their work, and I want them to keep being enthusiastic about their work, and so this issue of employee wellness is very central to what I'm doing on the Phoenix
very much.
file.
Appreciate that. Our final two interventions will be 2 minutes each. Madame Villeneuve, 2 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you. So, in your mandate letter, you had to put in place a new vision for post-Canada. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. But right now, I'm in the city, but I used to live in the countryside, the villages of 3,000 to 5,000 people. Right now, even in the rural areas, automatic banking services have disappeared. There is nothing. Post-Canada has a proposal relating to the idea of creating within Post-Canada, not just monograms, but to offer banking services to the population. This is what is being done in other countries around the world. What is your vision in terms of this proposal?
Much for the question, and it actually raises two issues relating to Canada Post. One, rural areas and servicing rural areas, and two, postal banking. And you're exactly right. In my mandate letter, there is reference to working with the Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Rural Economic Development to improve services in rural and remote areas. I come from Nova Scotia in a rural town, and it's exactly the type of thing that I'm sure you're thinking about. Canada Post has a new vision, and it is to remove this rural surcharge for remittance services, which would ensure equivalent pricing between rural and urban markets, and Canada Post has actually already taken this step. We know there's more work to be done. I'm sure that's why it's in my mandate letter. I'm eager to deliver on the commitment. In terms of Canada Post and postal banking, we've heard loudly and clearly from Canada Post that it should focus its efforts on excellence in service and its core functions, and we agree with that.
We leave it
view.
at that, Minister, because we have Mr. Green up for 2 minutes, and then we must be suspended to go into committee business. So, Mr. Green, you have 2.
Thank you very much. I'm going to put on my old city councilor hat, and anytime I look at a department, I look at the variations for FTE complements in terms of your staffing, and I see some what appear to be material variations, notwithstanding the fact that you probably had to supplement for the Phoenix debacle. But I'm just wondering, through you, Mr. Chair, what are the trend lines in terms of your contracting out? How many jobs have you had to contract out over the last year?
Well, thank you so much. Given that that's an issue that is quite technical, I will ask my deputy to step in.
So the only thing I would add on this, Mr. Chair, is the department's actually has been in growth mode for 2 reasons the last couple of years. The member already mentioned Phoenix. There's been significant growth there. And also the other issue that's causing growth, excuse me, is the parliamentary precinct long-term vision and plan. Massive projects staffing up there as well. So contractors are absolutely a crucial part of our delivery force, but the FTEs of the department are growing.
It's actually, it looks like, based on your own plan, 20 to 21, your FTE complements go from this year 16,000 to next year 13,587. So I'm assuming that if you're having the same amount of work and you're losing 2,400 FTE complements, that can only come through contracting unless you're reducing the amount of work that's being provided through the service.
We have a full slate of work at PSPC. Much of it relates to projects that start and then stop again. For example, on the parliamentary precinct, over the past number of years, we have employed 25,000 people. Okay. And so it is the fluctuating nature of the work that we do that gives rise to some of the differences that you're seeing.
The variation is coming from the construction of the precinct?
Thank you very much.
To some extent, and
Just
Mr. Chair, can I ask that
can I just
that
add,
an
Mr.
answer
Chair,
be
that-
provided in writing through the clerk?
Absolutely, Mr. Green, as I do as a normal course of practice at the end of each meeting. There are usually very many questions that unfortunately we couldn't get an answer provided because of time constraints. So I would ask in this particular case, any further questions that have been posed by individual members, if you could respond in writing to all of those through the clerk so that we can distribute that to the committee members. Mr. Matthews, you had a question, I believe?
I wanted to make one clarification, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Page 58 of the departmental results report actually answers the member's last question, so I would just leave it at that.
So much. Colleagues, rather than suspend and go into committee business, because we do have another group coming in here at 11 a.m., I'm going to keep the witnesses at the table and deal with this in public if I can, very quickly. A revised calendar has been distributed. All of you have seen that. And just to clarify, notwithstanding what was decided at an earlier meeting, when the PBO appears before this committee on March 24th, he'll be speaking only to his reports on supplementary estimates. He can be invited at a later date to speak on the main estimates and a report on the mains. Can we agree with that? Thank you very much. And finally, on March 26th, this was an outstanding question from the last meeting. We have filled it with a red tape reduction study because the minister has responded to us, not available on the 26th. So as to the advice of this committee, we're going ahead with another hour or 2 hours on red tape reduction. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Can we get that on the record? Minister, thank you once again. This is your first appearance before the committee.
Look forward to seeing you again.
We do appreciate and we
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing you again. Colleagues, we are adjourned.